good afternoon, good evening.
Good night.
Good night. Bye. Welcome. Bloody welcome to the show, which is called
Sunday Chat.
Indeed it is. I feel a little bit bleary-eyed this morning.
You were up. No, I was up before you, wasn't I? You were up about 7:30. Yeah.
Well,
What's it now? About 11:30?
Well, you know, Paul, in the usual way, I'd tumble out of bed, stumble to the kitchen, pour myself a cup of ambition and yawn and stretch and try to come to life.
Honestly, in like 30 and a half years, I don't think I've actually encountered that happening.
Well, it's every day. 9 to 5, what a way to make a living.
Oh.
Yeah. So, yes.
Gosh, how many days is that? 3 times. So we've been together over 10,000 days.
Oh, gosh, it feels like that.
There was a queen who only sort of reigned for a few of those, wasn't there?
A queen?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Which queen only is something of 100 days?
I don't know, Paul. I'm not a history expert.
I thought you were.
No, sadly
you
not.
were.
I don't have the retention.
Was it Catherine? Oh, I can't
I
remember.
don't know. It doesn't matter. You can Google.
Yeah, Google.
Do the Googling.
Yeah.
So, welcome.
Sunday Chat!
Yes, indeed it is.
I can go now. Yeah.
So, busy morning. It's Saturday morning. And
Viewing.
we've had a viewing. So we were up early, blah, blah, blah. And, doing a bit of
Things.
tidying, cleaning.
I dusted
breakfast.
yesterday.
Paul dusted
I
yesterday.
dusted the whole house yesterday.
Yeah, he's getting quite good now. I've trained him well.
I was actually told I didn't need to do something.
No, certain things you don't. The viewers
Which-
won't
yeah.
notice that you've done the mirror frame, Paul.
But as I said to Richard, if you're going to do a job properly, do it well.
Paul, you don't.
Or is it the other way around?
You don't understand that it's actually been done
found-
properly every week.
I have found in certain areas of the house over the last few weeks 20 years of dust.
Oh, shut up.
20 years. I had to get a skip in the other day just to remove a dust
Paul.
ball from the corner.
You're so funny.
Oh,
I don't think
dear.
so, Paul.
Yeah, no, not really.
Seriously.
No.
So let's kick off with our usual slot. Richard and Paul's weather report.
What did you do just then?
Oh, like that.
Were you flattening your wife out?
No, I was just... Yeah, whatever. Stop it now. Silence. Don't do that. Making sharp noises. It's not advisable. Put your hands down, calm down, just because you've had a coffee.
Yeah, I have had coffee. It was nice.
So, yeah, it was okay. It was okay.
Well, it was instant.
Uh-huh.
Well, you say you don't like much coffee in
Not
your
really,
thing, so,
no.
yeah. You used to like your Nespresso, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Richard and Paul's weather report. What has the weather been like this week, Paul?
Like that, really. Yeah. It's
Well, it's been warm and humid in places.
It has been really humid. It's been really humid. I was saying to Vivi, I can't remember what day it was, but I was shaving with my electric razor at one point and it just felt as though my razor was sticking to my skin because it was so humid. I don't think I shaved very well that day. I haven't shaved at all for a couple of days. But yeah, it's been sunny and grey, but mainly warm and humid.
Warm and humid,
Yeah.
but cool this morning. The
Yeah.
humidity and the heat has left the building.
It has.
And it's rather cool.
And even though you can see the blue skies faintly, there is a lot of pale grey just sort of, overshadowing the whole blue sky, which is a shame.
You can say all of that sentence by saying it's overcast.
Yeah, it's overcast.
Yes.
Yeah, a little cloudy.
Word.
Yeah, Cloudy with the chance of meatballs.
So, and they're saying that we may get thunderstorms at some point, but I don't know, I don't see it.
We were supposed to have them yesterday, and we were supposed to have some earlier in the week, weren't we?
Yeah, it doesn't happen.
Didn't have any of those.
Although I noticed from the lightning map, which I adore, love it, love the lightning map, that France had some real crackers.
Right, yeah, well, France very often does, doesn't it? Northern France, obviously.
Yeah, northern France, real crackers.
And occasionally they drift over Jersey and Guernsey as well, but it used to, I mean, we had that fantastic thunderstorm in Guernsey, didn't we, when we were there 2 years ago?
Yeah, I think I did a little
that
video,
was fantastic.
didn't I? Did I do a little?
I think you did a little video, yeah. There was one particular thunder crack that was really loud. Yeah,
you
lovely.
Can watch it. Yeah. Stop it.
And what will next week bring? It will bring more weather. That's what it'll bring.
And I think we're going to get a little bit more rain.
Yeah.
Rain on the way.
More rain.
So that's good. Thank you very much. Before we continue, we'd just like to say a big thank you to Christine for your very generous gift, Christine. We were overwhelmed, and it actually was my moment of joy this week.
Was it your moment of joy?
Well, it was, because we're not going to go into what the gift was, but it just gave us such a boost. It was just lovely. I mean, just amazing. Thank you so much. We're really grateful to you, Christine. Thank you. Right.
You were touching my leg then.
Sorry.
Because sometimes when he thinks I need to shut up, he taps my leg.
It was just an occasion where I was just playing footsie.
Yeah. So yes, thank you hugely, Christine. Christine supports us monthly on coffee as well, which, you know, all our coffee supporters, thanks hugely for that.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Paul Papa Poil.
We're both still a bit coffee, not... So we've had coffee and coffee. We're both coughing a little bit still, aren't we?
A little bit. Just, a little bit of an overhang. No. Hangover. That's what I meant to say, from the cold, from the fluey cold thing that we had.
Yeah, a hangover, not a hangover.
Oh no, never hungover.
No.
How was the working week, Papa Poil?
It's actually been busy for me.
Has it?
I've got quite a lot done. There were quite a few forms that I needed to be filled in this week for some funding applications for our sake that I'm doing, and it was one of those where when you're doing sort of applications for funding, sometimes questions are asked in a specific way because they want to tease other bits of information out of you. And you obviously need to make your funding application fit with what they are funding. You know, I know that sounds obvious, but you really need to get as close to what they're looking for as possible.
Okay.
So sometimes a paragraph this week, I think I wrote about 10 times because I kept on reading the question and reading the guidelines and thinking, I don't think I've answered that in the way that they want it answered.
You've got to hit the criteria.
You absolutely do.
It's a bit like doing an NVQ.
But it's also hitting it's reading between the lines as well.
A bit like an NVQ.
Exactly, yes. So that's been...
NVQ is a National Vocational Qualification. I have 2 NVQs.
You do, don't you?
I do.
Yeah.
I've got a level...
A level something?
Level 2 and a level 3, I think I've got.
There we are. I've got no NVQs. No.
You do them on the job usually. That's why it's called a vocational qualification. A level 3
job
is
training.
No, it's not job training. You do it on the job. You have to be in a job to do an NVQ.
Right, okay. So I could do an NVQ through Paul Savidor, couldn't I?
Yeah, but what NVQ would
Well, I
you
don't
do, Paul?
know. I don't need to do any more
I did
things anyway.
level 2 customer service and level 3 advanced customer doodahs. Anyway.
And
lovely
how was
stuff.
your working
My
week
working
been,
week, I worked
Richard?
Monday to Thursday this week.
You did,
Thursday.
yes.
And yeah, it was quite busy, and yeah, it was fine. Again, pleased to have the opportunity to work extra hours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, it was fine. It was all good. So Paul, there's been a few interesting things in the news this week, I've noticed.
There's one that I noticed, only noticed it this morning, about this bean that was found by a person on a Welsh beach. It's a bean seed, but the bean seed, it's not like our sort of, beans like that, or even the gigantes, which are sort of like that. It's like this. And it's called...
Well, it looked like it was like this.
Well, that's
to
the
me.
whole pod. I mean, the whole pod is sort of like a metre long. It's quite incredible and really quite
So
tough.
What was the story, Paul?
Well, I was telling the story, Richard, and then
Get
you
on with
interrupted
it.
me. So it was found on a Welsh beach, and this guy germinated it and realised that it was a seed and it was going to grow pretty big because the seed is this big. And he contacted the Eden Project, and unusually for them, because they need all plant passports and things for anything that goes into there, because it's such a controlled environment, they sort of work through paperwork and the process to take it from him and grow it on. So that's what's happening at the moment.
What is it?
It's a Entardus gigas, and it's basically just a huge bean plant, and it's very often called a sea bean because they get when they fall into water and the sea, and they float about the oceans. And the reason it really caught my eye this morning is because Dad and myself tried to germinate one years and years ago that came onto a Guernsey beach. And we didn't, there was no, what is this? Let's contact the Royal Horticultural Society, or, it's like, oh, look, this is a huge bean seed. And we just planted it. And then Dad sort of realised that it was so huge it must come from warmer climes. And, you find them in the Caribbean and Africa and South America. So we took it to the tropical vinery, which used to be in Guernsey and was just down the road from where we lived then. And it did actually germinate. But I can't remember what happened from that point. I can't remember, because we were so close to the tropical vinery, we used to visit quite often. There was a entrance fee that you had to pay, but because we were sort of like neighbours, we didn't. I just turn up there and look at all the amazing plants, including pineapples growing. It was the first time I saw pineapples growing like pineapples do. And this plant germinated, and now I want to know what happened to it. But the tropical vinery closed decades ago in Guernsey, so I'll never find out. And of course, Dad is no longer with us, so he wouldn't. I couldn't ask him. I can't ask him now. But yeah, it was rather lovely because it transported me. Just reading this article this morning transported me back, and that's actually the second time that's happened this week.
I'm sure you're going to tell us the other occasion that happened, Paul. Make it interesting.
So it was my moment of joy this week, actually. It really was. So I was deadheading the very pale calendula that Vivi gave us seeds of a couple of years ago, and I grew them this year, and they've grown well. I was deadheading them, not as well as Vivi does in her video. We'll link to that here as well.
Jesus.
And suddenly this scent hit my senses, and it transported me back 50 years again to when we were making Battle of Flowers floats for the North Show in Guernsey. And I've said this before, and I've mentioned this as well in a Guernsey Gardener in London. You know, years ago, we used to live opposite Edward LePage in Guernsey, and Edward used to do these most elaborate, large floats for the Battle of Flowers. You know, they had to be taken by a big tractor, you know, drawn along by a big tractor, because his floats always seemed to be the biggest, and he would win the Prix d'Honneur, so, you know, every year virtually. And it was just amazing. But we used to use real flowers then, and they were asters. And we used to sort of have the head of the aster, take the head off the aster, and then put glue on the back, and then stick them onto the floats. And it was the scent I got from deadheading these calendula the other day just took me right back 5 decades to that moment of picking the aster.
What is the scent?
Oh, I don't know.
It's flowers have that sort of, they've either got a scent, it's like chrysanthemums, they've got a specific smell,
scent,
haven't they?
yeah. It's really, I don't know,
Just
I mean...
a green, petally, flowery scent.
It's like an aster calendula scent, that's what it's like.
I don't know what that smells like.
I mean, it's so difficult, and I think this is the thing with our senses, you know, with when we get a fleeting sight of something, or we hear, you know, a train in the night, or you have that fleeting smell of something. It's like time travel. It just transports you back.
Especially smells.
Yeah.
You know, they connect you with your history, don't they?
And that was my moment of joy this week. It was so, it literally stopped me doing what I was doing. I was deadheading the calendula. This happened, and for a moment I was sort of frozen in time as I was transported back. It was magical. It was a moment of joy.
Good, lovely,
It really was.
Paul. I've been gardening. Did
You
some
have?
gardening yesterday. I tell you, it was like Day of the Dead yesterday in the garden. Dead animals everywhere. There was a dead starling, which was lovely, and then a dead mouse. It's all those cats in the garden.
It is.
I tell you, our garden's a dangerous place to be, critters.
Yeah, it is. I mean, they do say that one of the biggest threats to wildlife in the UK is domestic cats.
Domestic cats, I know.
You know,
I know, which is one of the reasons why we used to keep our cats indoors.
Yeah, that was one of the reasons.
One of the reasons.
But they loved it, so...
Well, they did. They had a great time.
Yeah.
In astrology news this week for you astrology lovers out there, Mercury is retrograde in Virgo. Great. Just what we need.
Oh, come on! So what happens? What is supposed to happen, Richard?
Look, let's explain Mercury retrograde. So Mercury is the innermost planet to the Sun. And from our point, Paul, stop it.
I was pointing it out.
Stop it. And from our point of view, we see it move around the Sun, so it appears to go forwards and backwards. Basically, that's the basic explanation. So, of course, in astrology, Mercury is the planet of communication and all forms of communication. So when that appears to be going backwards, kind of causes issues. We don't want those kind of issues. It's going to be there for a few weeks.
Well, why does it look as though it's going backwards?
Because it's innermost, so it's nearest to the Sun. So
Right.
it's whizzing around the Sun. So you see my finger going forwards and backwards because it's going around. So from our point of view, it gets to a point where it appears to go forwards and then backwards.
There we are.
But it's just an optical illusion. It's not really going forwards and backwards, it's simply going around the Sun.
It's always going forwards, in fact.
Yeah, of course. Lovely. So also, it's Carnival weekend here in London, Notting Hill Carnival.
Have you ever been?
I've been to a sort of carnival party many, many years ago.
Was it at the Notting Hill Carnival?
It was at a flat.
In Notting Hill?
Yeah.
Oh, well, there we are. Been to Notting Hill
And
Carnival.
but it was just a party. It wasn't actually at the carnival. But yeah, it was fun. But carnival's
never
not
been.
for me. I mean, 2 million people descending on Notting Hill.
2 million?
Yeah, that's what they expect.
No,
And
too many.
yeah, people
Yeah.
having fun and clouds of marijuana smoke in the air with the police turning a blind eye.
I thought you were saying, and with the police taking a drag as well. I thought that's what you were going to
Well,
say.
there'll be enough in the air for everybody to
Yeah.
enjoy, I'm sure.
There is a fabulous video of a journalist doing an interview to camera talking about cannabis that has been confiscated.
But it wasn't cannabis, baby.
What was it?
I think you'll find it was...
Well, something else,
it
another
was
drug.
opium.
Opium, okay. Opium that had been... And they were burning it. And
it was in Afghanistan, wasn't it?
He did several takes. And he was getting sort of like...
He was getting high.
He was getting high from
I've seen that.
the
It's
thing.
fun.
Yeah, fun.
Yeah, so it's Carnival, and it's the 55th year
Oh, right.
this year. So if you're going to Carnival, have a safe time. I couldn't do those crowds, no way.
No.
No.
Is it over 2 days or...
3 days, isn't it?
It's 3 days, is it? Right.
Saturday, Sunday and Monday,
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
I think.
Because, of course, in the UK, it's a bank holiday.
It's bank
On Monday.
holiday. Yeah, so we've got Monday off. Hurrah! Hurrah. Yeah. Anyway. Also, I noticed in the news they're doing this Loch Ness monster search
yes.
thing.
Yeah.
How bizarre. I was always really into the Loch Ness monster as a child.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It was kind of in the 70s, it was kind of a big thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, and of course there's is it actually a prehistoric dinosaur that has survived? Of course there'd need to be more than one, wouldn't
Well,
there?
there'd need to be a family
There'd
and a
need
lineage.
to be quite a few. Or is it a really large sturgeon? Because
eel.
that's the thing. Well, yeah, or an eel, but they're saying that eels in the UK don't grow big enough for what has been seen.
But I think also the nature of Loch Ness and the way in which the water behaves, they say can fool the eye.
Yeah.
So you can be tricked into thinking there are wakes and ripples that stay a certain way for a length of time.
Yeah.
So it can fool you. So that'll be interesting. I think it's online. I think people can take part online, and they're going to fly drones across.
Citizen science.
So that's quite fun. I remember watching a film many, many years ago about Loch Ness, and it was kind of a comedy film. It was a black and white comedy film, and right at the end, the Loch Ness monster comes out the water and winks at the camera.
Oh yes, I do remember that.
And I found it online. I can't remember what it's called, but that terrified me.
What,
as
it
a
winking?
child. It coming up and going, it was sort of like a really dodgy model. But it terrified me, and I remember having a nightmare where I saw the Loch Ness monster come through my curtains in my bedroom. Do you remember those days of being a child where you saw things? I used to see all sorts of things when I was a child. I had a very vivid imagination. Or I was a child psychic, either way.
My brothers had the little Daleks, plastic Daleks when they were kids and I was a kid.
They had plastic Daleks?
Yeah, like little ones.
I had little ones, 'cause
really
I had the
tiny
game.
ones. And, well, maybe it was from a game, I don't know.
I had a Dalek game.
But they put them in the garden, and then they convinced me that we were being invaded by Daleks. So I rushed in to Mum and I said that we're being invaded by Daleks. And Mum said, no, I don't think so.
My sisters were convinced they saw a fairy once.
Oh, and it was you doing the cleaning.
It was when we were children, Paul. We weren't forced to do cleaning. We weren't child slaves. I did anything like that willingly. No, they came running in, absolutely convinced that they had seen a fairy in the garden fly away. And, well,
I mean,
you know what? I follow a podcast and it's about modern fairy sightings.
Oh, right.
And it's on YouTube. And I'm really interested in it because who are we to question?
Well, yeah.
I mean, I often think if you were living in ancient times and you didn't know about the myriad of insects, there are some insects that you would think was a small person.
Well, the dragonflies. I mean, you know, if you didn't know what a dragonfly or a damselfly was, and you see it, it's sort of like extraordinary, you know.
The Irish are very much into the
little people.
The little people, and so are the Scandinavians as well, aren't they?
Yeah.
Iceland, I think, as well.
But aren't they?
It's deeply rooted in their mythology, in their storytelling.
Aren't they quite naughty in Scandinavia?
Well, I certainly know in Ireland from the Modern Fairy Sightings podcast. If I can find it, I'll link. There are all sorts of different types of stories, and one of the stories I was listening to was about this person having to walk home. In fact, it's a professor, and he was recounting a story of walking home from the pub, where he'd consumed quite a lot of alcohol, I think, that evening, down a country lane. And he suddenly had the sense, it was totally dark, but he suddenly had the sense of somebody walking beside him. And there is a particular being that does this. And I can't remember the full story, but it was quite spooky. And there's some kind of legend where you're not supposed to say anything to this creature if you detect
or it
them.
takes you
or
over.
it takes you away, or something like that. I can't remember, but really spooky, and because I love spooky things.
Yeah,
Whether I
absolutely.
believe them or not, I love being spooked. And we'll talk about a programme that we watched recently at the end. So, Loch Ness
I love
Monster,
Loch
all
Ness
spooky
Monster.
things, and of course we're speeding towards Halloween.
We are. I've noticed the latest Halloween is actually on Netflix now.
Is it? Oh, I want to watch it. Halloween Ends with Jamie Lee Curtis.
Oh, is it
I
the
love
latest
Jamie Lee.
one?
Halloween Ends, it's called.
What's Halloween Kills? Is that a different one? Oh, I don't know.
Halloween Kills is the one before, I think.
There's one that's just been added. I saw the other day.
Anyway, those are all the little news
Loch
articles.
Ness Monster, I think, was in a Doctor Who at one point. I think a John Pertwee one. I've got that memory in my head, and I think that was one of the ones that did actually scare. I think that was the only Doctor Who that ever scared me, actually.
I used to hate the beginning of Doctor Who.
What the?
Yeah. And I was always scared of the end of Star Trek because of that face at the end, that long, gaunt, white alien face at the end of the titles.
Right.
That used to terrify me as a child. Yeah. Isn't it funny the things that you're terrified of when you're a child?
Yeah, I was terrified. I was sleeping next door at Auntie Betty and Uncle Mick, and they had a cupboard, and it was a cupboard above wardrobes, and for some reason the vacuum cleaner hose was in that cupboard up there, and the cupboard was open and the vacuum cleaner hose was just sort of poking out, and I couldn't sleep at all that night because I thought it was a monster. I must have been about 2 or 3, I think, at the time. I was very young.
I was terrified of my Auntie Maureen's toilet.
Why?
Don't laugh. Alexa, please stop. Yeah, don't laugh at me, Paul. It was one of those, like Vivi's got.
Oh yeah,
the
with the
flush
cistern at the top. Yeah.
And it made a really loud noise when you used to flush it.
Right.
And I, for some reason, hated it. And actually I kind of still don't really like toilet cisterns.
Above. Or generally?
No, just generally.
There we are.
I don't know why. I don't like having to do anything with a toilet cistern.
A cistern phobia you have.
Well, I've had to.
Of cisterns.
I think that's really cruel, Paul.
Oh, dearie me. Of all the things you could have a fear of.
Well, it's something about that deep water. I mean, it's so deep and
dearie me.
spooky.
Oh.
I've had to fix the cisterns a couple of times and flushes and things like that, but I don't like them. No. What?
Oh, I just think that's
that
just
funny.
like mad, really. Yeah.
Well, Paul.
Well, phobias are though, aren't they? They're
not necessarily.
Yeah. Well, fear of spiders. I mean, particularly in the UK, most spiders in the UK will not harm you at all. Yet people have an absolute fear of them.
Well, yeah, I found one on our blanket the other day on the bed.
Oh.
That was quite happy. I tried to shake him off. It was the fleecy blanket, and he didn't want to go.
Oh no! Sometimes they just want to be there.
He was all cuddled up in there, so I left him there.
We had a spider nursery again this week.
Oh, we did. The little spiderlings going wee. I said to them, now you need to leave before the weekend, and they've all gone.
They have.
They've distributed themselves around the house.
We've got viewers. You need to go.
Yeah. And they did. Bless them.
And of course, we are in the middle of spider season. So,
yeah, lots of spiders in the garden. I had to move several webs.
I found a spider in the sink yesterday. Oh. Just after you'd washed it, I went there about an hour later and there was a spider in the sink. Oh. So I hoiked it out onto, well, actually did it with my hand and then sort of put it outside because I'm sure it was an outside spider
that had come through the window.
Yeah.
Bless them. They want to be with us at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, they do actually. They sort of come into houses at this time of year to, find a place to overwinter. So
yeah, and I'm sure old Victorian houses like this have got thousands in the walls.
Yeah, and under the floorboards.
Yeah, we don't mind spiders. They're good. So that's lovely. So Papa Paul, the final question is, what have we watched on television this week? What are we really enjoying? We're really enjoying RuPaul's Drag Race UK Season 4, which we haven't watched. It's not a new season, but we're catching up and it's really good.
Yeah, we've enjoyed
really good
that.
Season.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're nearing the end. I think we're in the semi-finals now.
Yeah.
There's one queen who's still in, and I find it astonishing that they're still there, but they are. So we will see. But been enjoying that.
Yeah. And we watched a programme on iPlayer, that's BBC iPlayer, called Paranormal, and it was an investigation by a Radio 1 DJ into a ghost story that she heard about and wanted to investigate. Pennyford Cottage. Pennyford Cottage. What?
Pennyford Farm.
Pennyford Farm, that's it. And she wanted to investigate it, so we watched that.
Yeah.
And that was really interesting, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it was
apart
quite
from
engaging.
the fact I fell asleep in the last episode. I think there were 4, half an hour each. And then the usual, intro and outro, so actually only about 20 minutes each.
But I enjoyed it because I quite like watching paranormal things.
You do.
Whether I believe in them or not, I kind of like it. I like to feel mildly scared. I used to watch Most Haunted.
You did,
and I used to find it quite frightening because you would be very often out on business and I would sit here watching it with the cats, and of course inevitably one of the cats would suddenly start looking into the corner of the room at nothing, and you're thinking, what are you looking at? Oh, is she contacting a spirit? Yeah. So I quite like being scared of paranormal things. I don't like being scared of
real
evil
things.
Humans.
No.
I'd rather not.
Or the UK government, yeah.
But so we watched that, which was good. We also watched a fabulous programme that Vivi turned us on to, the 70s supermarket.
Which is Channel 5, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's all about the stuff that used to be sold in the 70s in supermarkets. And
well, it's about the development
Yeah.
of the supermarket and how we used to all go into a shop and with our baskets and be served.
yeah,
You know, people, you go, oh, I want a tin of beans, and you wouldn't go and get the tin of beans. They would get the tin of beans and put it in your basket and all of that. And how that developed into what we have today, which is basically where we do the shopping ourselves, particularly if it's like a self-service till that I go to at Lidl.
one of my memories, actually, and it must have been the late 60s, I must have been 2 or 3, because it was when we lived in Wilmslow. And I can remember going to the shop, which was a corner shop, with Mum on my tricycle, which I think was red, and my tricycle had a metal box on the back, and it would fit a loaf of bread.
Oh, right.
So my job was to carry the loaf of bread home.
Oh.
But the shop was a spa.
Right.
Was it a spa then? Or was it a mace? I'm not sure.
It was one of those convenience.
Well, it was kind of one of those stores that was a mixture. So it had a small selection of things that you could pick yourself.
Right.
But it had a counter that had like a meat cutting
Yeah, I was thinking about those.
wheels.
Yeah.
There were certain things that they had to serve you.
Yeah.
So you would
Yeah.
have to ask for the cheese and the meat and things like that, but you would pick certain things yourself. So it was a sort of combination when supermarkets were starting to allow self-serve, or shops were doing self-serve. And I can remember that style of shop, that old style of shop.
Yeah, we used to, I mean, our Woolworths in Guernsey on the second floor, used to have that fresh food counter where they would, you know, cut
Like a
meats.
sort of deli
And,
counter.
yeah, it was like an early deli counter, and pork pies and things like that. It was, I always loved it, and I loved it as it got up to Christmas, because you had the deli counter over there, you had all the Christmas decorations sort of right next to it. It was sort of like, oh, it's sort of food and Christmas decorations. I mean,
God,
yeah,
pork
as a
pies.
kid.
I used to love pork pies.
Pork pies, yeah.
Especially if they had lots of jelly. I used to
Yeah,
love the jelly.
yeah,
I know,
I
isn't that
know,
weird? Because
yeah.
I don't like textural things
No,
like that generally.
he doesn't.
But I used to
Anything slimy,
love a
doesn't it?
pork pie with the jelly, with a bit of mustard on the side. I used to love that. Oh, and a meat and potato pie. Oh, my mouth's watering.
I think
I'm
that's
vegetarian.
That's quite northern meat and potato pie.
Meat and
isn't it?
potato pie, pasties.
I mean, Cornish pasties, obviously,
Oh, yeah.
are sort of, you know, of that ilk as well.
Lovely.
So,
Oh,
yeah.
I used to love a pasty. Oh.
but you can get sort of relatively nice ones from, you know, vegan ones and vegetarian ones from that thing you like.
Greg's. Oh, I love
that's
a Greg's. I used to, oh, yeah. Oh, Greg's.
That was something you were trying, weren't you? You were doing a recipe last year where you were trying to get a pie filling that you
I was trying to cook soya chunks for a length of time to really soften them so they would take on that sort of meat texture, but a real meat. I almost perfected it, but not quite.
Well, I think also it was part of the Cheap, Tasty and Filling
It was an experiment.
series you did. Link.
Thank you.
And you know, the price of gas was going up and up and up, and you were cooking these soya chunks for quite some time, and you were going, well, I don't think, because of the gas portion of the recipe, I don't think this could form part of Cheap, Tasty and Filling.
It wasn't cost effective to do it.
Because I think you got it to a really lovely texture and flavour, but I think it was like 2 hours sort of cooking and adding additional liquid and things like that, but it was delicious.
Yeah, anyway. So we've watched Schitt's Creek,
Yeah.
a few episodes as usual, and of course Murder, She Wrote with our lunch.
Patrick's turned up. In Schitt's Creek.
We're at that stage.
Yeah, we're at that stage. Yeah.
And that's it for this week's Sunday Chat.
No.
Oh.
So I have just finished this book. I Let You Go. And I do a lot of reading. I'm back into to constant reading. Having joined the library earlier, late last year, I think, I've always got a book on the go. And generally my books, where Vivi likes non-fiction, I really like fiction and crime and thriller and mystery type things. And this book I would highly recommend. I read the sequel to this. It's not linked, but the book that came after this, I See You, it was called, and I really enjoyed that. But I picked this up at the local library. We've got a sort of, there's a section where you can put books you don't want and you can obviously take them. So the library, you have to obviously check them out and in, but this is a separate sort of bookshelf at the entrance. And I picked this up with the other one. This book is really well crafted, really well crafted. And yeah, so it's Claire McIntosh, I Let You Go. Yeah, recommend that. Don't normally recommend books.
Paul's book club segment.
Well, I was thinking about doing a book club at one point. Yeah, maybe we should.
Also, thank you to those of you who've signed up for the newsletter.
Yes.
We're in the final stages of putting the first one together, so that will be out shortly.
Yep. If you haven't signed up for it yet, go to richardandpaul.com, and where contact is, you'll also see mailing list. Hover over it and then fill in that mailing list, and then it automatically adds you. If you can't do that, drop us an email or put a comment in down below and we'll get back to you. Yeah. And finally, a quick update on Mum.
Yes.
So Mum is back at home, back at her care home. I spoke to her a few days ago and she was settling back in. We did have news earlier in the week that she was to go home this weekend, but the following day she was back at the nursing home and or the care home, and my brother called me to let me know. And yeah, fingers crossed. I mean, in the conversations we've had with the nurses in the hospital and the care home staff, the word massive heart attack has been, how your mum survived that massive heart attack, nobody will ever know. But you know, mum is strong, you know, she is. Whether surviving it is really what she wanted, I'm not sure. But she's back home at the care home, she's being cared for. There's going to be another assessment as, you know, time progresses, and yeah, we'll keep you up to date with that. But at the moment, she's back home. Yeah.
Good. So, thank you very much for watching, and if you aren't subscribed to our channel, please consider doing so.
And of course, right at the end, you always get bananas. Well, not always, occasionally.
Thank you.
And then we know, don't we? Yeah.
Thank you, Paul. Let's say goodbye. Say goodbye now, Paul.
Goodbye. See you next week.
Bye. Thank you.